Hello and welcome to the Clashing of Steel. So today I'm doing a review on Commander Germanicus. He is 100% infantry general, all of his skills are infantry based, and his first skill is heavy infantry charge. It's rather short but has rather good flanking and overall impact damage. For the second or tier 3 skill he's got the Testudo, which blocks all the arrows coming from the front. I don't think it gives that many defense benefits, but in overall it's a good thing against archers. And for the third or tier 5 skill we have the Vengeance. It gives Germanicus' troops melee damage and attack boosts for the duration they are in combat. To deactivate it you need to be 10 seconds out of combat. That is usually how I even dose against Germanicus. So all of his skills can be upgraded for better impact damage, acceleration, speed, even time they are active, or perhaps even cooldowns. As usual, charge gets impact, speed, acceleration and cooldown. Testudo gets arrow block, charge deflect even at some points, and even some melee defense. And Vengeance gets mostly attack. On tier 5, heading towards the tier 6 with Roman Swordsman, you have a choice to make. For tier 6 you can either pick armored or regular legionnaires. There are many differences, but biggest are probably the movement speed and armor. I actually have a comparison video of those, so I think I'm gonna leave it either at the end or in the description below. So enough talk about the skills, let's head over to the gameplay. So as you can see I'm playing armored legionnaires at tier 6. And I'm trying to form my units a bit wider while I hold down left alt one by one. For the sake of the tactics or the sake of the victory, I usually defend my archers. Because when you leave your archers defenseless in the middle of nowhere, the cavalry is going to run over them at some point. Although at first I'm trying to go and defend with the swordsmen up there, I'll try and cover their back and flank the best I can. But before I head up there, I usually try to hold the watchtower, or at least have a vision until I see some sort of opponents. Fortunately for me, right now there's a cavalry up there. So I ain't seeing yet any enemy, but fortunately the archers are advancing, so I'm gonna advance soon as well. You can see these swordsmen up here. I'm not sure spreading out in a single line with all 3 units is a wise decision. I myself would have moved a bit backward to defend a more bottleneck area, somewhere where the opponents can't get around me. Fortunately we have already discovered all the opponents, so we can see what units they are using. Unfortunately they have only 2 cavalry players. So I still need to defend my archers somewhat. If there wouldn't be any cavalry on the opposing team, I could actually let the archers do their own thing, and at the same time I could focus some other area. So we can already see that some opponent's archers are firing, although the player in front of me is playing Germanicus as well, I think. He's used the Testudo. Without any defense we could actually push back opponent's archers with the Testudo. But right now I'm trying to cover my archers as well. I'm not sure if it works anymore, but back in the old days you could actually walk your Testudo into your own archers and it would defend somewhat. So the first engagement is beginning. You can see the opponent's cavalry back there. It's coming for a flank rather soon. This is why I usually don't push away from bottleneck areas, because if I'm in a bottleneck area I can defend my flank. So to help my teammate I'm charging in as well with one of my units, trying and engaging the cavalry. Cavalry itself actually isn't that much of an opponent against swordsmen or any other melee units. They can support with their charge from the flanks or the sides or something, but when going head to head the swordsman will practically win every time. Although I engaged with actually 2 of my units with this cavalry, I only used 1 unit's Vengeance. This is because Vengeance has a relatively long cooldown and it can be baited out by smart players. Actually the main reason I used it was because my teammate was taking morale damage from the cavalry. Just in case he would rout, I would use the Vengeance to take care of the cavalry and then fight against the swordsmen if the need may arise. Right now you can see that I have positioned my units so that I can go in flanking. I'm trying to keep the Vengeance unit engaged the best I can, because as long as the Vengeance unit is engaged or engaging in combat, he will do a lot of damage. I don't want for him to stay out of combat for more than 10 seconds, otherwise the Vengeance will wear off. So from this unit I'm moving in from the south to advance on the closest enemy. So I charge in from the rear, which gives me extra impact damage, and since I covered their last open side, I pulled down their morale and now they are routed. And since I wanted to swarm the enemy, I didn't use formed combat on that unit. Formed combat creates a single line and it doesn't allow your units to swarm the opponents. It allows your unit to engage with the front side like a single line fighting against the opponent. But when you flank them, you want to swarm them, you don't want to give them a chance where they could like hold their morale. You can see that we have routed the last enemy as well. The problem actually there is that we are all units inside each other practically. We are a great target for catapults and for everything. In many situations I would not suggest swarming into that huge pile or making it yourself with massing 3 of your units inside one another. You are a rather easy target for anyone who wants to flank you, who wants to surround you. They can play rather well against you. That way you aren't covering the areas to your maximum potential. Even the bottleneck areas, just keep 1 unit there, maybe 2 in the bottleneck and 1 in the rear just to cover it. Also when you engage you can use the heavy infantry charge a bit sooner before the engagement. That way your unit collects speed and might even surprise the opponent who's just waiting for the last moment to charge. There isn't usually point to charge when you are engaged. It can pay out sometimes when you are flanking the opponent and then charging in from the rear once again, but when you are already engaged from the front, it doesn't pay off. I'm just noting it that few have done it and it often doesn't pay out. So the Studo is a great skill against javelins, archers, slingers. It can't block the ballista rounds, it can't block catapult rounds or anything like that. But if you ignore the first archer arrow shot at you, you might be able to bait out the opponent's barrage and pop the Destudo right before that. The Destudo usually isn't a great thing to use before an engagement, but it can be upgraded into a quite reasonable thing that will give you a bit charge deflect. Although with upgrading the defense of your Destudo, you won't be able to get it back to the current state when you are out of the Destudo, it can still be a great tool with a charge deflect. And well, the Vengeance, you gotta be careful how to use it. Right now everyone is into a struggle match, so it's usually you engage them and you pop Vengeance. But I usually try to counter it. Some others have tried it against me, that is why I popped the Vengeance one by one. He engaged and disengaged several times before he had an actual chance against me. But in the end it still didn't matter because my allied troops were around him and he had to defend from several sides at once. But I'm guessing that most opponents still try to engage you and fight you until they die or until you die. I often play melee units and I use them to defend the archers, because they can help me weaken the opponents and I can take care of them. With Romans I also use consumables like stakes and caltrops to give myself an advantage. I can hide the stakes to the forest, and caltrops can be deployed around me in a matter of 1 second. So I hope this video gave you some insight about Germanicus. His skills, probably a few right maneuvers and a few other small tips and tricks. If you don't like to be slow, you can play them with regular legionnaires, or you can even mix up your combo with 2 legionnaires and 1 javelins, for example. I usually try to be tactical and play with my team, and hopefully I can manage against most opponents. You must always be aware of the engagements that are up ahead, the opponents that you can see. If you are outnumbered, there is no point for you to just go head on in and die. Okay, there are moments when you can like hold the enemy back while your team is capping, or something like that. But in overall, if you're just alone on one side and there are 3 players coming towards you, 9 opposing units, there is no point in staying there. You might as well pull back to base and do as much of decapping and holding the base as you can. Best case scenario, your team will support you and you can deal with the opponents and still win the game. Most players play for themselves, not for the victory. But the victory can give you so much more. So don't forget to subscribe and thanks for watching.